Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Destiny Pharma PLC interim results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, all questions submitted today will be reviewed, with responses published on the Investor Meet Company platform where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I would like to submit the following poll, and if you could give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand you over to CEO Neil Clark. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm here with our CFO, Sean Clayton, and we'll run through his presentation, which includes key points from the announcement this morning on our financial results for the first 6 months of the year and an update as at today. But thank you for joining, and we'll move on into the presentation. But I'll see, just as backdrop, some of you may be new to the story, but Destiny Pharma is a well-established biotechnology company focusing on infection prevention. So we're developing medicines that prevent infections, and the backdrop through the pandemic has highlighted, of course, the clear global need for better medicines, treatments that prevent infections, benefits to patients, less illness, but also benefits to healthcare systems in terms of the financial cost of managing infections. And don't forget that we are looking here to develop medicines that will save lives and save money. And essentially looking at the increasing interest in impact investing, we believe we meet those key criteria. We are delivering treatments that meet a global need. But I'll move on into the detail of the presentation through the disclaimer. And again, just highlighting here in our summary slide what we're looking to do and what we have. Two novel clinical assets from different technologies. So that gives us diversification, spreads the risk, but also the fact that they're late stage, heading towards phase 3 means they've been through extensive preclinical phase 1 and phase 2 clinical studies. So we have lots of data on efficacy and safety, and also scaling up manufacturing. So really good position to be in for a biotechnology company, pretty unique, I'd suggest, on AIM, and a good track record since the IPO. Yes, we've been later, as is often the case in drug development, than we perhaps forecast, but broadly speaking, we've delivered to all the key milestones. And I think, again, look at the news in the interim statement today, there's been more progress this year. Obviously, partnering is a key task. We've made that very clear during the year. We're still working on that, especially with M3, our lead program. I'll perhaps cover that later, but we know that's a key evaluation inflection point that we have to deliver, and we're very focused on that. And a lead model, so cash carefully managed by Sean. The vast majority is spent on R&D and adding value to the company through protecting and adding to our intellectual property. And we are, as I said at the start, we're really committed to continuing to build a pipeline, infection prevention pipeline. There's a clear global need, great commercial opportunity, but also the genuine wish to deliver better treatments to help patients who are suffering from the damages that can be caused by infections. So this is the classical pipeline slide that you see in pharma and biotech companies. In orange, you'll see our two biotherapeutic assets. So these are assets, treatments in development, which are based on elements of the human microbiome, biotherapeutics like bacterial formulations. NTCDM3 is our lead asset for the prevention of the recurrence of Clostridioides difficile, a nasty gut infection. It's a non-toxic strain of M3, which pushes out the toxic strain of M3 and stops toxins and the recurrence of the infections. It's a very simple summary, but it is a unique single strain biotherapeutic. We also have a small cold nasal spray, which is grant funded, which is completing that work over the next couple of months, but that's gone well. And then in blue, we have a platform, our XF platform, which has delivered a lead candidate through phase 2, XF73 nasal, which is really well positioned as a preventative treatment to kill the bacteria in the nose before we unfortunately go in for operations to stop the bacteria moving from the nose into the wound and causing these serious post-surgical infections. So you see some earlier programs there. We have a partnership with an investor in China Medical Systems, CMS. Not only are they very supportive investors, they also have started their own study with XF73 for dermal skin infections in China, and more news on that hopefully over the coming months into next year. So an active pipeline, but we know the focus is very much on the lead assets, and indeed probably a lot of people will be asking questions around where we are on partnering for M3, and we'll come to that in due course. But we're targeting large markets. These are novel programs, clear unmet need, so really well positioned, and very excited about the progress we've made over the years, but especially this year, and also, of course, what we're looking to do over the next months and into 2023. And the backdrop, as I said at the start, we not only are our products well positioned as hospital products that can be made at low cost, so they can be priced sensibly, safe, they'll be cost effective, and they will prevent infections. But the backdrop also, of course, is there is a global need for better treatments in this space. It's fair to say the area of infectious disease has been neglected by big pharma over the last decades, and now biotechs are coming to the forefront to bring forward new treatments, in our case preventative treatments, and also we're looking to reduce the threat of antimicrobial resistance, AMR, the superbugs, which cause real problems. This was highlighted during the coronavirus pandemic, which I know was a virus, but the fact is that many of the viral infections then led to bacterial infections, and it highlighted the lack of alternatives for medics in treating and battling infections. We're looking to stop 2 infections caused by 2 of the bacteria, which cause major problems, Staphylococcus aureus and also Clostridium difficile. But this global threat of AMR has been around for years and will continue to be with us, and we meet and address this problem. But of course, also, one of the few, if very few, advantages of the whole coronavirus pandemic is it's highlighted this importance of infection prevention. And if we don't understand now the healthcare benefits and the financial benefits of stopping infections before they take hold, then we never will. But it's clear that prevention is better than cure. Always been Destiny's positioning, and we're really, as I said, really excited about the potential for our pipeline and the growing understanding of the real need for infection prevention. Last week there was a major webinar run by the US CDC, Center for Disease Control, which was running large elements by Dr. Fauci of their response to the coronavirus pandemic. But this session was on sort of hospital infections, and clearly highlighted in discussions the drive for infection prevention as a key part of bringing forward new treatments for battling infectious disease. So once the transcript of that meeting is available, we'll perhaps publicise that. But again, highlighted again the increasing interest in what we're looking to do. And we'll come into the highlights through the interims, again picking out, just won't go through every one, but obviously on our lead program M3, we've made good progress, progressing finalisation of the design of the phase 3. Key to that, of course, is partner discussions, and we had a chairman's statement in the summer which said we were making good progress and we were looking to close a deal, and we're still in that position. My view and Sean's view, ideally we would close the deal by the end of the year. Obviously these discussions are not announced till they're done, but we are in discussions, and let's see where we get to. But we're very confident we have a high quality asset and we can close partnering deals, but we're fully aware that's a key news event people are waiting for, so don't worry, we're fully focused on that. But as backdrop to that whole program, which of course helps with the partnering, the team have made great progress in terms of regulatory discussions, progressing the manufacturing, and carrying out market research, etc. And we're really positive, increasingly positive on the potential for M3. It's interesting, as you have discussions with potential partners, of course they do their own research, market research, and in these cases it's supported and added to the data we built up. So we're very confident in the value of M3, but obviously we need to deliver that deal. And then on XO73, again, we've made good progress regarding discussions with regulators. What we need to do here is to clarify the phase 3 studies that we want to carry out. Of course, you need to talk to regulators to clarify that. We're doing that, and we will, by the end of the year, have clarity there. So we will know the type and size of those phase 3 studies, the cost, and that will go into a data room. And we will look then to close partnering deals, ideally next year, on XO73, to do the same as we're looking to do with M3. So a clear, consistent strategy for looking to find partners for those phase 3 studies to lead to commercialisation, but also importantly to help co-fund the cost of the phase 3s, which, as we know, are larger and more expensive. But a great position to be in as a biotechnology company with such high quality assets at such a late stage. And then the earlier pipeline, we continue to make progress. I won't spend too much time on this. But again, we do have a vibrant earlier pipeline, and we continue to win grants and start new projects. And obviously, the news there will come over the next months and into next year. But the focus really is on those lead assets that we'll cover today. I was going to hand over now to Sean just to cover off on the next few slides on the financial highlights as we obviously announce those interim statements today.
Right, thanks, Al. So quickly just cover off the sort of key highlights on the financials for the first half of the year. Taking a step into comprehensive income first, we posted a loss of 3.8 million versus 3 million in the prior period. And as we'd expect, the majority of that spend was in R&D, over 70% of total spend in R&D programs, and mainly focused around our two lead programs, M3 and XF73, in line with our strategy to push those towards starting phase 3 studies at the earliest opportunity. In terms of non-R&D costs, they came in around 1 million, which are relatively flat on prior period. We recruited some additional staff in the second half of last year, and also post-COVID we have increased activity around travel and attending conferences and face-to-face meetings. Move next slide, please. In terms of balance sheet, we continue to have a robust net assets at 30th of June, around 10.7 million, and we have cash of 8.4 million in the bank, following net cash inflows 3.7 million in the period. Those inflows obviously benefited from fundraising we did in March, where we generated net proceeds of 6.1 million. We also had an R&D tax credit of 0.9 million received during the period in relation to the 2021 R&D spend as well. So I think if you adjust for those two items, our net cash burn, if you like, was around 3.3 million in the first half, compared to around 3.8 million the prior year. So, we continue to be very focused on where we're spending cash, and that's primarily in R&D programs and keeping overheads to a minimum. And importantly, we have cash reserves which take us through to mid-2023 as we advance our programs and look to conclude partnering deal. That really concludes the financial overview.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So moving on, we come back to really our standard investor presentation, which talks especially through our two lead assets. So I was going to move through these slides, but perhaps not take too long on them, because we have been through these before. And as we know, the key focus is on discussions, no doubt, and questions regarding partnering. But M3 is a very well-positioned asset. We've owned it now for 2 years and made great progress in repositioning it, talking to the regulators, clarifying the phase 3 clinical strategy, but also progressing the manufacturing. Manufacturing is an important, if not equal, component of drug development. Alongside the clinical work, you must have a cost-effective, large-scale manufacturing process, and this is what we're developing here with M3 and indeed with XF73. But Clostridial difficile infections, especially America is the biggest market, 500,000 cases a year, 29,000 deaths reported, similar levels of prostate cancer. It's a big problem, multi-billion-dollar cost to the healthcare system. And we know from our discussions, talking in some cases to patients who suffer from recurring C. diff infections, it's very nasty gut infection. Similar to people who suffer perhaps from nasty chronic back pains. These recurring illnesses are not nice, and they're very expensive to treat and manage, and they have a real impact on people's general well-being. So a big opportunity to deliver a better treatment, and what we're looking to do with M3 is to stop the cycle of recurrence. So what happens in treatment of C. difficile? You can knock back and kill the initial sort of toxic strains of the bacteria in the gut with cheap antibiotics, but those antibiotics damage the gut microbiome, and that environment, yes, they kill some of the toxic bacteria, but they also leave an environment where the surviving toxic bacteria can flourish. And what M3 is looking to do is a non-toxic strain of C. difficile is to come in and stop this sort of stepladder of recurrence, which leads to very nasty infections. This is damaging inflammation of the wall of the colon, leading to effectively holes in the wall and many, many episodes of diarrhea. So very nasty for patients to have. And remember, many of these patients picking up this infection, often in hospital or care homes, also have other illnesses. They're in hospital for a reason, or they're very elderly. And as we all know, the last thing you want on top of one healthcare issue you're managing is a nasty gut infection and diarrhea, and also the risk of cross-contamination. So in some ways, a classical infection, again, hospital and community acquired, very costly to treat, and at the moment, a lack of options for doctors to prevent a recurrence. And M3 is very well positioned. As we said before, the phase 2 data was excellent, which is the reason we acquired the package. If we can deliver similar rates in our phase 3 studies, we will reduce that recurrence rate from typically 30% down to 5%, which means 95% of the patients who have M3 would not have a recurrence, which would be a game changer. And we've tested this concept, as you'd imagine, with using specialist consultancy, talking to doctors, talking to payers, reimbursement, people who control sort of the budgets of hospitals in US and Europe, and really good feedback. Obviously, we need to deliver that profile in the phase 3 studies, but that's what we're looking to do. And of course, this is the profile that has attracted partners, and hopefully we can close a deal and a partner will join us to test this in phase 3, and then of course deliver a new product to the market. So it's a safe drug, so it's naturally occurring. A very small percentage of Americans have this non-recurring strain in the gut, which is how it's discovered. So it's got that very sort of natural, safe backdrop, fits into the real interest currently across the world in life sciences of the whole human microbiome. How can we harness components of the microbiome? We have billions, if not trillions, of bugs and viruses and fungi on us. How can we harness components of that to improve development of new medicines? And we're really at the forefront of this with this very targeted single strain approach. This is not a multi-consortia approach. It's not healthy feces or fecal matter approach. This is a single strain, clearly identified. So it's like a drug in a way, but actually it's a naturally occurring bacteria. So really exciting, novel, and in phase 2 data, incredibly strong data, obviously each tested in phase 3. And the feedback here, this slide here talks, samples some of the feedback we've had from independent work that was done. And again, across the world as well, in terms of US and Europe, our key markets, very strong feedback. And increasingly, as we get feedback from some of the partnering discussions we've had, this feedback is reflected in the market research they do, of course, when they assess the asset. So we're very confident in the quality of this asset, as I keep repeating. In terms of where we're heading next, as we said before, we know from discussions we've had with the FDA, 800 patients needed in the phase 3 package. We have recently announced, of course, discussions with EMA in Europe, the European Authority, where they've said yes, similar to the FDA, they accept our outline plan of 800 patients, a single study. Obviously, with partnering discussions in terms of running the phase 3s together, we may flex that plan, but of course that will be done with the benefit of the partnering deal. But we have this outline plan which is agreed, and we're getting budgets and planning the real detail for this study as we move forward. Manufacturing, again, is also something, as I said, that we're progressing, and we're looking to start the study with a partner, ideally next year, and obviously patient recruitment, hopefully to complete that in a couple of years, and then bring with a partner. The partner will lead that pre-approval process and hopefully get the product approved and launched. So still some years to go, but in drug development as a biotech, this is incredibly close to a product which is the holy grail of everything we do, and importantly will deliver, we believe, a very safe, fast, effective new preventative treatment to patients who are currently suffering. Our second program, X73, this was the company, as it were, at the IPO back in 2017 when I joined. We've delivered on what we said we'd do at the IPO. We undertook the preparation for a phase 2 study, which we completed with the backdrop of COVID. Yes, it took longer than we wanted, but we delivered excellent data a year ago. And since then, we've been progressing discussions on phase 3 designs, and we're making good progress there, as we've announced. And this is, and I look across here from ThinkApp. We're in Bartholomew Close. We look across at Bart's Hospital, and I like to say that as I look across now at the hospital, there will be people in there currently going for operations who are at risk of post-surgical infections. Bart's, I'm sure, is doing a fantastic job. They will be screening people in the nose to see if you're a carrier of Staphylococcus aureus, including strains such as MRSA. And if you are, they will be looking to decolonize you in the nose. And how do you decolonize a bacteria that lives in the nose? Well, you currently can put in an ointment, an antibiotic called mupirocin that will kill the bacteria. All we're developing here is a new modern drug, XF73, which again is a nasal gel, acts very fast, very safely, doesn't generate resistance. So we're looking to address this problem of the risk that patients across the world have. A third of the world are a carrier of this Staph aureus in the nose. They have a much greater risk of these post-surgical infections. They're relatively rare, but when they happen, very damaging to patients and also very expensive. Again, there's numbers here on the slide. Again, in the US particularly, of course, the costs are always higher, but it's a problem across the world, both in the UK, Japan, Europe. Nasal decolonization, and again, the prevention of hospital infections is a key mantra. Hospitals and surgeons are assessed on their ability to reduce infection rates, and the market's currently, we believe, underserved, and we have a modern new approach which has a great market opportunity. Again, great phase 2 data, but we obviously need to move forward with a partner and deliver the phase 3 data. And XF73 comes from our XF platform. Fantastic data for the phase 2, 99.5% eradication. This was a double-blind placebo comparative study, a very high-quality phase 2 study. And as we've shown before, rapid action and the speed of action of the XF drugs, XF73, means the bacteria don't have the chance to adapt or become resistant. This has been published data. It's difficult perhaps to claim that you would never see resistance, but we have published data and including an Oxford University report reviewing the data showing that to date we've not been able to see XF73 generating resistance. So therefore, if you have less resistant strains, XF73 by preventing infections is antibiotic sparing. Again, it addresses the global threat of antimicrobial resistance. It stops or reduces a significant use of antibiotics in treating infections when they occur. We're looking to stop infections taking hold. Good cost of goods, good support from the FDA, and again, really well positioned. We compare here against the competitors. We have this old antibiotic called mupirocin. We have clear advantages there in orange for XF73, but also we believe advantages against the sort of chlorhexidine, the antiseptic approaches. XF73 has got, we believe, the strongest clinical data set, cleanest profile, but it's still relatively easy to use, or very easy to use for doctors and nurses in hospitals, because it's still a simple nasal gel that goes into the nose. They're used to putting in an ointment from mupirocin. So it's revolutionary in its profile with its lack of resistance, its use active in 1 day rather than 5 days. But actually, it's evolutionary in terms of it fits with the fact that they're used to putting an ointment or a gel into the nose of patients to deliver this decolonization. So we're looking to obviously to move on towards phase 3s after the very strong phase 2 data. Again, as you'd expect, we're out there in the market doing investigations with clinicians and payers in the US and Europe, testing our target profile. Again, as with M3, excellent feedback on the profile of XF73. What we need to do, of course, is to back that up with phase 3 data, and that's exactly what we're working on. And by the end of the year, we will have clear phase 3 plans, which we will announce, and that will really enable us then to have a very active partnering campaign. And we're very encouraged by the potential for XF73 and the large market opportunity. And yeah, covering here, I think I've covered this already, but moving towards phase 3s and obviously manufacturing scaling up. And again, this will be later than M3, but we're looking to end next year with both assets partnered would be my ideal. And with M3 started recruiting patients into its phase 3, and XF73 very close with a partner to starting those studies, but I think patient recruitment realistically would not be until 2024. Then we have earlier programs, which I won't touch on in too much detail near as the clock ticks on, but our smallcough nasal spray is progressing well. We'll have more news on that in due course. And also earlier programs, as we've announced during the year, dermal program delivery continuing to go well, both our US funded through NIAID, our program, but also our Chinese partner investor, CMS, their own program in China is progressing as well. So more news on those programs as we move forward. And we've started 2 other programs in oral mucositis and cystic fibrosis with XF. So early stage, so we'll see what news we deliver from those over the next few months. But a lot of activity in the early pipeline. And Destiny Pharma has shown, of course, since its early work on the XF platform, we are capable of bringing through assets from sort of lab notebook chemistry through to phase 2 studies. So a proven biotechnology company delivering from early concept to clinical data. And this, in summary, 2 novel assets, clearly positioned, differentiated, so reducing risk, going towards phase 3s, good track record since the IPO, continuing to deliver on our key targets, and obviously, as we're all aware, one of the key targets we need to deliver on is partnering, so we're fully focused on that, and we'll look to close that deal obviously as soon as we can, especially on M3, and a lean model. Money is spent wisely, vast majority, of course, on generating IP and value generation in our clinical programs. And we are on track to build a very valuable company. Obviously, what we need to do, we're told, is obviously deliver on both partnering deals in the next, say, 12 months. But the key focus in the next months, of course, is closing an M3 partnering deal. And as I said many times, we're fully focused on delivering that. But a really exciting stage for the company, and we're very confident in our ability to move forward and really sort of break out. Obviously, the markets are tough at the moment, but they will come back, and we're really well positioned to take advantage of that as we end this year and move into next year. So I was going to stop there, and thank you very much.
Neil, Sean, that's great, and thank you very much indeed for your presentation this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the team takes a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Neil, Sean, we did receive a number of pre-submitted questions, as well as you can see in the Q&A tab, a number of questions that have come in throughout today's presentation. So thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. And Sean, Neil, if I could please just hand back to you to run through that Q&A tab, and where appropriate to do so, if you could please just read out the questions and give your response, and then I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, obviously, as expected, questions on partnering, and definitely we've been consistent in saying that we're looking to close a partnering deal for M3. We are in an active process. It won't be obviously announced that it's completed, and these are complicated, important negotiations. And as soon as we close a deal, we will do. But it's not unusual for these things to take time. But I think we've been consistent in the messaging from what we've said today. And in terms of the structure of the deal, there's a question regarding the structure. Obviously, you start off with sort of the fairly standard structure of wanting to have, yes, upfront milestones, royalties. And then there's a negotiation. One of the things we look at here is the balance between upfront payments and contribution to the actual cost of the clinical study. So, if and when we close a deal, we obviously will report the summary terms, as we have to do under our listing obligations. But we're looking obviously to do the best deal we can for the company and shareholders. But it's not just about upfront cash; it's about the whole deal and the obligations of both parties, and of course the quality of the party. And really having an ongoing partnership. It's, these deals need to you need to think sort of 10, 15 years ahead, that you want to be together for the long term, because of course the real value is delivered as the product is registered and delivers sales in terms of royalties, carried interest, and then success-based milestones. So we're looking at all those aspects, of course, as we negotiate terms and discuss with potential partners. There's a question here on the number of patients required for a global exosome 3 study. Yes, it's a question here regarding, are we focused, perhaps could we focus just on the US rather than the rest of the world? Yes, we could, and we do discuss this. We could just do a study that meets the FDA's requirements. Of course, now having had those discussions with the FDA, we know what they want. But also we know there is interest in Europe, and perhaps I think it's fair to say ideally we would run a study that met the requirements of both EMA and the FDA. But as I said, that's something we're finalising over the next few months, led by Dr. Yuri Martina, our Chief Medical Officer. And we've made very good progress. We've obviously had discussions with both of those authorities, and now we are looking at a fine detail. And you're quite right, the size of the study drives the cost, and also we do have the opportunity to focus on the US alone, or indeed perhaps Europe alone. But I think it's fair to say we know the US is the most attractive market. And let's see where we get to there. We'll announce more in due course. Question on spore cord products. It's a good question regarding COVID-19 pandemic. Is it mostly in the past? Well, I know 2 family members have COVID at the moment, luckily not seriously ill. And also I've had a text, I think, regarding a potential booster this autumn. So it's still out there, and remember, thinking across the world as well, there are still some countries where it's still a major problem. And I mean, also, I'd say about our sport cough product, it also addresses influenza as well. Again, these are still threats out there, and there is also a big push linked with the whole story of infection prevention about, was it pandemic preparedness? So yeah, it's perhaps, so luckily not as crazy panic that we were a couple of years ago, but still seriously being looked at, and definitely, yeah, we're fully aware of the fact there are some competing products, and obviously vaccines making progress, but sport cough is still very well positioned and has some, we believe, some clear advantages. So we'll announce more on that in the next few months, and we believe there is still a market opportunity. There's a question here regarding markets for our, well, that's actually on the slide in terms of market sizes, so perhaps I won't cover that. And we also, in the presentation, look at timelines. Obviously, we need to finish phase 3s before we get recurring revenues, because the products can't be launched until those phase 3s finish in the next 3 to 4 years. Obviously, in the short term, we may get some upfronts from licensing deals, but the real value, of course, comes when the products are successful in the market, hopefully, and we have recurring revenue streams from royalties. I can't comment on equity development. They put out a note today in terms of upfront license fees. Obviously, it depends on the structure of the deal we negotiate, so we can't comment on that. And definitely, yeah, the questions regarding partnering for M3 again. There's a question on Ondi, so which obviously we're happy to answer that. Ondi Biomedical have a light-activated nasal spray. One of their programs, and they've announced some phase 2 data, is they call it photodisinfection. It's been around for quite a while. It's we know each other. The market is so large. There's room for both of us. Our data, our clinical study is, we believe, perhaps a different structure to theirs. But yeah, we wish them well. But we believe we have clear advantages in certain patient populations. May well be they, in terms of this whole area of infection prevention and nasal decolonisation, it may be certain hospital patients, their approach may be more appropriate, but it doesn't affect our potential market size. And in some ways, it's surprising there isn't more competition in such a large market. If you consider that there's, in the US alone, there's tens of millions of patients at risk going in for operations a year. This is a market that perhaps there should be more competition than there is. So wish them well, but we're very confident in XS73 and its positioning against any of the competition. I think that's all of the questions covered, is it? So thanks, everyone.
Neil, Sean, absolutely, and thank you very much indeed for taking the time to address all of those questions that came in from investors this morning. And of course, if there are any further questions submitted today, we'll make these available to you immediately after the presentation has ended for you to review, and then add any additional responses where it's appropriate to do so. Neil, perhaps before redirecting those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, that'd be great.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. We're making good progress, but we're fully focused on delivering that partnering deal, which is the sort of short-term inflection point that everyone's waiting for. But also, longer term, we have 2 great lead assets and a vibrant early pipeline, and there is a clear medical need for what we're doing, but also great commercial opportunities, which of course reads through, we believe, to a great value opportunity as well for people who can stick with us, invest in the company. We believe that our valuation will increase in due course, and we have a great opportunity as we head into end this year into next year to really grow the company. So keep following us, and we will keep delivering, and we're fully focused on delivering that partnering deal.
Neil, that's great, and Sean as well. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to update investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Destiny Pharma PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good morning to you all.